How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at Shiver SuspenStories number 1. Or maybe I should say Suspense Stories. It's just with that shared S, I can't help myself. But anyway, if you guys know, EC Comics has been brought back by Oni Press, and they've put out a few new EC books. We had Epitaphs from the Abyss before this, as well as Cruel Universe, and they've had a varying degree of success. There's been some good stories there, and there's been some pretty bad ones. But Oni has decided that they're going to do 4 books in total. This is the 3rd one, and in January we're gonna get a 4th. Hope they can keep up that schedule. But with this one, it's actually a pretty good book. It's a Christmas story, and I doubt they're all going to be holiday themed. The Christmas is probably just for this one particular issue, but it's a strong introduction. It has a host segment that has a pretty interesting little payoff, and we also have 2 really good stories at the beginning. One told from the perspective of an ornament on a tree, watching this woman's life get more and more terrible as the years go by. And a second story that's a reinvention of A Christmas Carol, but Scrooge is inventing a time machine, and it's his future self trying to change his life. That was a really good spin on it. There's 2 more stories that are pretty good as well, but the first 2 in the host segment I think are the best. But there is one kind of problem with this book. The book is $7.99. That's a pretty steep price point. Now, normally for these books, I think it's $4.99 and you get 3 stories. Now, this is $7.99. You get 5 stories and the wraparound, the host segment, so kind of 6. So it is more. Like, I get that. But that being said, it is pretty steep. But also, one of the stories in here, the last one, is actually a reprint of a Vault of Horror story, so it's not an original story. And don't get me wrong, the classic EC comics are great, it was a fun read, but I'm buying the collections. You know, Dark Horse is putting out collections of the old EC books, so I don't really need this, you know? And if this is counting towards, like they say, oh, it's a special bonus, but I know I'm paying for it, it's something that doesn't really need to be in the special, and if that was taken away and the price could have gone down a little, I might have preferred that, because again, I love old EC stories. I mean, it's a good story, but I don't really need it to be printed here because I'm getting the treasuries, you know? So if I could have saved $1 not having it, I might have preferred that. But also, even though it's a good story, it's a winter story, but it's not a Christmas story. I would have been singing a totally different tune if we could have got, what was it called, an All Through the House, the Killer Santa Claus one. If you could have gotten that one in the book, that would have been totally different. By all means, reprint it here. Overall, though, it's a fun enough little book. It is overpriced, but we do get some good stories, and the wraparound in the first 2, I think, are pretty good, you know? So, it's good. I'm really hoping we don't keep this $7.99 price point, and I just feel that kind of sucks. But at least we get these nice covers with some really cool imagery. It's fine. It's just one of those things that I kind of groaned a little bit when I saw how much it was, but you know what? Whatever, at least it's thick, right? Anyway, in order to analyze this further, let's switch to the close-up camera. I'll show you guys a little bit of each story and a little bit of the art and say my piece on every one. No major spoilers, but without further ado, let's switch to the close-up camera. Alright, here we are inside the castle, taking a closer look at Shiver SuspenStories. And let's bring this closer to the camera. I do really like this cover. A really shocked family, because they got a head in a box for Christmas. I love that even the dog is spooked. And who's that in the background? Well, above there we get the classic EC banner with the Shiver SuspenStories logo in red and green. Number 1 from December, classified as Chills. Flip it to the back for their ad, and there at the bottom is that $7.99 price point and the Oni Comics logo. Crack it open and we get the table of contents. Now, checking it twice is the wraparound segment. So that's the host segment. You'll see that at the beginning and the end of the original stories. We get 4 original stories, and then we get Two of a Kind, originally published in Vault of Horror number 26. Now after that, we're going to get into the stories proper. I'm going to try to be avoiding major spoilers, but I do want to say my piece on a few plot points and make sure you guys have a basic understanding as to what the stories are about. We open up with someone telling the story of Santa Claus, but of course it's twisted in a way to make it seem scary. Someone who knows everything you've done is going to be breaking into your house. Well, who's this person here? It's a mother and her 3 children, and she says, we're going to be staying up late to catch Santa Claus, and in order to stay up late, we're going to be reading stories from this book, and it's of course the same name as the comic. This is a really fun wraparound host segment. It does come back after the original stories, and we get a conclusion to it. That was pretty fun, and I think it's a cool idea for, what this thing is all about. I don't know if we'll get this character back for a future issues. I mean, it's a Christmas story, so it's probably a one-off, but overall, I did like this wraparound. After that, we get into the first story, and that is The Last Ornament. We get to see the one house on the block without any Christmas lights. We get to see these 3 grumpy old people, and they're talking about how their mom won't die and leave them their inheritance. And you know what? She's suffering, right? What if she was put out of her misery? Would anyone really question if we weren't watching her too closely on Christmas and she accidentally took too many pills? Well, Santa Claus there on the tree is going to be overhearing all this, and we get the story told from the perspective of the mom's last remaining ornament. Turns out he was made in the old country with special care, and the daughter got him when she was very little, and he's been on that tree ever since, and he remembers the good old Christmases. Well, from his spot on the cupboard, he would watch her grow up, get married, have babies, and the eventual downfall of her life, the husband leaving, the kids turning into little angry kids, and then she breaks down and cries, and the only thing Santa can do is watch and cry with the rest of the ornaments. Boy, this is a sad setup, huh? We all kind of get that gloom this time of year and that dreaming of those past Christmases, and to get to see it be such a character story with this woman growing up and things getting worse and worse for her, and getting to see those ornaments we see every year and actually having a story from that perspective, this is a really good story, and I really did like it. I'm glad they put it first. After that, we get Ghost in the Machine, and we get to see some carolers chased away by a character named Benjamin Scrooge. So yeah, we're doing a Christmas Carol story, but it turns out that this Scrooge is trying to invent a time machine, and he's visited from Hem from the future instead of the ghost. And the version of Hem from the future says, "Stop trying to build the time machine. You wasted your life on it." And the younger version of Hem doesn't care. He's just thrilled that he actually built it. So the older version has no choice but to take him on a time adventure to prove him wrong. Rather than the ghost of Christmas past, old Scrooge transports him to one of the lectures, and he says, "Look, this girl was clearly into you, and you paid her no attention because you were thinking about time travel." And yeah, I do like the idea of your older self going back and trying to say, "Hey, why did you do that? Your life could have been so much better if you had done X, Y, or Z." A super relatable, good concept, and I really do like this spin on the Christmas Carol. Now, things do get a little wacky when that younger version of Scrooge notices the other two, and now we have 3 Scrooges running around in this time adventure. And I will say, part of me wishes it was just a simple little story with a unique and different way of framing it, but with the wacky stuff, I know a lot of people are gonna get a kick out of it, and there is some fun ideas that go on later. This concept, they really do snowball it. So overall, a pretty fun story, and I can appreciate a really unique spin on it. After that, we get the story Red as Any Blood, and we get to see this mother stealing a silver bell from a Christmas shop. A security guard sees her and decides to ignore that whole observe and report thing, however, almost gets killed when she almost stabs her eye out with this snowman. And as they chase each other around, there's this good back and forth. "You don't understand, I need it, my son, he's sick," and her saying, "I don't care, look, I get all this stuff this time of year, just come back and stop with this chase." But of course, things are going to get more and more dangerous. It's this fun little chase through a mall. It's pretty energetic, and I do like it enough. I did see the ending coming. I'm curious if you guys will. There's one small detail at the beginning that I'm like, oh yeah, this is what it's about. It's a fun enough little story, but again, when you had the first two kicking it out of the park, a wacky little chase sequence is fun, but not the best thing ever. And for the fourth and final of the original stories, we get Curse of the Magi, and we get to see this young couple that loves each other very much, but they can't conceive a child and they're very poor. Each of them has one thing they care about. She has really good hair, and he has an old-timey antique pocket watch. Well, the woman only has $1.87, which I have to wonder how far back in time is this supposed to be set? I mean, that's not even enough to buy this magazine. But anyway, she looks in this store, and this old woman approaches her and says, "You want a gift for your husband, a chain for his gold watch? Why, I also make wigs. I will buy your hair in exchange for this chain." And then likewise, the husband visits the shop later, sees all these hair combs, and decides to sell his gold watch in exchange for a comb for the wife's hair. We find out, of course, that this old woman is up to something. Yeah, she's a witch, and she now has two of their possessions. So the classic holiday mix-up, but also throw in a little witchcraft there. The story has a pretty fun and original ending to it, and it put a whole spin on it. Overall, not as good as the first two, but a pretty solid little story, and I thought it was fun enough. And for the final piece, again, we do get the conclusion to the wraparound before this, but we get to talk about Two of a Kind by Johnny Craig, and they refer to this as an EC encore presentation, and they talk about how they redid the coloring to try to give you the best possible experience, and there it is, Two of a Kind. We get the Vault Keeper telling us the story, and it turns out there's this famous actress that there's no pictures of her. She only does stage plays, so no movies, and this one paparazzi tried to get her, but when the film was developed, it was just a photo of her front door and not her, and that's become the big thing, to try to get a photo of her. However, she sneaks out the back of the ship and has thwarted them once again. Well, when she does the play, she insists that only evening performances. However, there'll be a bit of a twist when she falls in love with her co-star. And I do like how the Vault Keeper will hop in and say, "You guys, you're horror savvy, you probably already know what she is," but he does also explain a second twist that I guess there just wasn't room in the exposition to do. But after that, they decide to take a skiing trip, and needless to say, things are going to go pretty dark for each of them. I do like this one. It was a bit of a twisted love story in the way the things kind of work against them towards the end. It is your classic EC Comics ironic twist. Overall, it's a pretty cool story. It's a classic EC story. I can't complain about the story itself. It being printed here, maybe, but you know, whatever. Overall, while it may be overpriced, it still is a pretty fun first issue, and the quality itself I can't really complain about. We got some really cool stories, and I thought it was pretty fun. Here's hoping they don't keep that $7.99 price point, though. Ugh. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my EC Comics playlist, where you can see me talk about the first issues of the other two books. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist here. Have a good day now.